And we're back with another episode of the PCC Multiverse. This is Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from the Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football Game Source, and of course, the Lakers Fast Break. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our great shows. And if you can, please give us that 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. And a big shout out, as always, to the radio stations around the world that check us out here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. But it wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without my good friend. It is the absolute fantastic person indeed. It is our own Vixen of V Rising. She is, of course, the mistress of plunder when it comes to her own Barkhouse Ross household. Just ask Robbie Ross. Go ahead and check them out today. As far as Vampires and Vitae, and of course what she's doing always at the Wild Beyond the Witchlight and more. Right there for you, wherever you get your podcasts on YouTube. And of course, it is Melinda Barkhouse Ross. And Melinda, the Vixen of V Rising. I'm running out of vernaculars to call you each and every week, but V
Honestly,
Rising.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say V Rising has been the thing for you these past few days.
It has been, and I've picked it up now both for PS5 and for PC, so I have it on both my laptop to distract me while I'm trying to get actual work done. And then I have it upstairs because what I figured, right, is because I know more people who played on PC than who played on console right now. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure things out on the PS5, and then I'm just going to have it happen in PC, and then I'm going to be like the V Rising savant to the group of people that I play with. So at least that's what I'm hoping for. And so if you're listening, you didn't hear that.
Okay. Don't listen then. What? I just said, no, please listen. Never mind, I said that. But again, we were getting into a conversation before we went on the air, and I had said we had to stop this. Some of our best conversations come off the air.
Yeah,
I wanted to talk to you first about The Boys. You said you need to catch up with the husband this weekend. Season 4 is out. It was interesting because they put out episode 1 last week, and then they put out 3 episodes this week. It's like this weird pattern, but okay. So I caught up to and binged it through episode 4. The thing I don't like, Melinda, it's not the series. It's not the season itself. It's the fact that you already announced that next season, which has already been renewed for, congratulations, is the last season. Don't tell me you've been, that's your last season. You can say you've been approved for season 5. Absolutely fine. Because people, worried about their shows going out and whatnot. But don't tell me that next season is going to be your last, because it just has this feel, whether you think it's good or bad at The Boys, it just has this feel through all the crazy stuff that goes on in that show. And believe me, there's a lot of crazy stuff. It just feels like it's a buffer season, like it's a filler season, like you're prepping for next season. It's good, and I think you should watch it. It's still bat bleep crazy, but it has that feeling. So I just don't like it when they tell us, like, for instance, Stranger Things, they tell us, okay, in advance, next season, it's the last season, all that. Don't tell me that. Just say you've got another season planned and go from there.
Yeah, or don't, and just have the last episode fade to black and say thank you all for watching. Can you imagine? People would lose their minds. That would be I'm going to do if I ever write a show. Last episode, fade to black. Thanks for watching.
I hear you. Absolutely. Amazon's Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which left you on a cliffhanger. There's the very real possibility. They've renewed it for season 2, but there's the very real possibility that the stars, as far as Donald Glover and Maya Erskine, are not going to be back. So they left you on a cliffhanger there. They're going to bring in a new Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Okay, whatever, fine. But in the case of The Boys, which is, again, been a really big hit for them, it's just so, I don't know, it just seems weird that you would go ahead and say, all right, we're already got an end date for this. So
Yeah.
this is what you're watching now is just leading up to that. Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
You know what it feels like? And forgive me if you are one of these people, Gerald, but it feels like the people who go on vacation but plan every minute of their vacation. Like, how am I supposed to enjoy it if I know what's going to happen in 10 minutes? No, I want to decide if I'm going to eat again or if I'm going to go back to the pool. Those are the decisions I want to make. I don't need a schedule. I don't need to know all of that.
We're a broad strokes kind of people. We just came back from
Yeah.
vacation. We're like a couple things here and there to go see and
Yeah.
do during the course of it, but not all of it. Yeah, you can't
Yeah,
structure all of it.
it's the out of bed by 6, we're gonna hike before breakfast, we're gonna have breakfast, and we're gonna yoga by the pool. Like, what are you talking about? No,
Now, if
I'm
you're
gonna
part of a
stagger to the pool and read a book. That's what I'm gonna do.
if you're part of a tour group, then it's not under your control.
No, but I mean that's what you're signing up for,
Yeah.
right? If
Okay.
you're gonna join a tour group, then
Okay.
absolutely. But if I'm just going on a schmoozy doing nothing vacation that I'm supposed to relax at, I don't need it all planned. So I think that might be though how I'm feeling about this season is what I'm trying to get at. Like, I already understand that there's a schedule and I understand there's a time limit on all of this stuff. So I can both expect the wild of the show to get cranked to 11. At least it better deliver on that if I know it's already going to end. It should be the craziest couple of seasons. Yeah. So,
it's still it's still doing it what it can, Melinda. It's still The Boys, and I'll just leave it at that. And I was thinking about this last night, and I think that The Boys, let's say, ever since streaming shows became a thing, I think that streaming shows have pushed the boundaries of what limitations for what you could conceivably put on the air.
Absolutely.
Outside of getting an X rating, let's just put it that way. I can only go so far because we're on radio stations, but I think that The Boys is pushing that boundary as far as it can go, more than any other show. Would you agree or disagree?
No, I absolutely agree. I think that The Boys is one of those shows that we'll look back on and we'll be like, oh, that show was actually iconic, and not just because X, Y, and Z, but also because of the boundaries that it did push and the things that it either told the studios that as an audience we're ready for and we can handle, versus things that may happen in the show that don't go over so well with the audience. Then they would know maybe to stay away from that a little bit more. But it could take, and this show just has the potential to spawn a lot of really dark television shows from it, now knowing that an audience will accept that kind of stuff on their TVs.
Well said. Very well said. It is The Boys season 4. It is up through episode 4 that I've been able to see. I will say that it is still, like you said, it's still pushing the boundaries on virtually every episode, but it's more character development, and it feels just more like it's a setup for season 5, but it's still pretty good. And if you get a chance, please check it out with a husband. I do recommend it still. But again, it's still bat bleep crazy. They make sure to put some stuff in there that'll say, oh, I've never seen that on television before, but okay.
Yeah, and I think that is part of the appeal of the show in general. I think is that, I think that there are definitely fans who watch it for the shock value of the show, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I shock and awe. And then, of course, House of the Dragon just came out.
Yeah.
Shock and awe again.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Josh and I talked about it. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So shock and awe seems to be thing on these streaming shows, but let us know what your thoughts on The Boys are, season 4, Pop Culture Cosmos at yahoo.com. But we got a great show. Melinda and I, in a few minutes, are going to talk about the Nintendo Direct to see what Nintendo can do during this E3, not E3, could be E3, should be E3, might as well be E3, but it is an E3 type of format. And then, speaking of that, on the back end of the show, I wanted to go ahead and throw in 30 minutes because TJ Johnson had to discuss his thoughts on the not so E3 as well. But before we do, Melinda, this seems to be like a kind of buffer week for the movies as far as not a AAA release, although there's some interesting releases. Of course, Inside Out 2, my guess, because it did so well last weekend. broke some box office records, the second highest animated film ever released in the United States. So happy for Pixar. Have a feeling they're going to do really well this weekend as the number one film. Interesting mix of films that are coming out this week. It just seems like a lot of these films, they force themselves out into the theaters. I know that the theater business needs to get better. I get that. But in the days of streaming, it just seems like some of these films would have been better suited to just go straight to streaming. They would have gotten a better audience and reception that they probably will get this weekend. One of them is probably the name movie of the set, although hopefully it does well. I'm not sure if it will, but The Bike Riders with Tom Hardy and Austin Butler. Austin Butler is riding high from his appearances in Elvis, and of course, Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on The Bike Riders? I mean, it deals with the subject like, I think of almost like a Marlon Brando type situation set in a kind of like a modern setting still, because they all have the jackets and they're part of a bike gang, etc., etc. They do some illegal stuff. It's not really, it doesn't go as far seemingly to me as Sons of Anarchy, but it still does some good, hopefully some good things. Been fairly good rated nonetheless.
Well, I mean, you have Tom Hardy and Austin Butler in a movie together. It sounds like a girls' night movie to me.
There you
go.
I'm
just putting that out there and letting that just land exactly where it lands. But no, I think that if this movie does have any traction or does get any traction, I think it's going to be people who are either already Tom Hardy fans or are becoming Austin Butler fans. And I think that once you sit down to watch this movie, I just have a feeling that it's going to be, I don't want to say a hiccup or a speed bump for Austin, because I feel like he's on fire right now and I don't think that he can do too much wrong. But I'm just not sure about this.
This doesn't seem like a summer movie.
I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah. I don't know if maybe, I mean, I guess we believed him as Elvis, so I guess I could believe him as a biker. I don't know. There's something that has me hesitating and believing it as I'm walking into the theater. So he's got to sell me on the performance once I sit down in my seat with my popcorn.
It's again, it could be a great performance by both those guys. They're both excellent actors. I have nothing to say bad about them. The thing is, though, is when the studio puts this out here at a time where you've got the big summer movies where people are being very selective. Let's just put that out there, being very selective about the movies they are actually going to go out and see. I'm not sure that this would have been a right idea. You put this out on a Netflix, because they're both Focus Features and Searchlight. They're both they're not, it's not a Disney or Paramount where it has to start or on Max where it just goes on Max. They could have actually made a deal to put this on a Netflix and get hundreds of millions of eyes on this product, but they've chosen not to start off with. And of course, I'm sure it will mill its way to one of those platforms eventually and still get lots of eyes on it. But it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems like you could have made a deal, maybe more, that might have profited you a little bit more in the long run if you'd have just put it out on streaming. And the next movie, Kinds of Kindness, which stars Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, and Willem Dafoe. And the reason why I say that is from the director Yorgos Lanthimos of Poor Things. It stars Emma Stone, who was the star of Poor Things. This is a nice, decently rated Black anthology as far as where it goes, dark, like you said. It's just not fitting in the summer. These two movies just seem like they were shoehorned in there because they had to give them a date by the studios. I just think both were better off with a better trajectory somewhere else. They obviously are not good enough to be considered, right there in the November, December, when you put them in there for Oscar bait and all that.
Yeah, I think they would both be great September, October movies, really.
Yeah.
I don't, I think that's where those two movies probably belong. But, maybe the studios, know something that we don't know.
Maybe we'll find out.
Imagine.
As far as the box office returns, Challengers was a movie that was released a couple months ago. It was Zendaya that I don't think the studio knew how exactly good it was, because it's one of the highest rated movies of the year. That
Right.
movie hopefully will find some sort of life later on this year to be bandied around as a possible Best Picture nomination or nominee, and then of course Doom Part 2 as well. So we'll see what happens, but these are kind of movies that I just think that are just going to get snowed under in a very weak box office overall. So
Yeah.
just curious why they did that. And then of course the other wide release this weekend is The Exorcism with Russell Crowe. And I'm reading the reviews for all these stuff, and this has not been a very good reviewed movie, but it's more so about where has Russell Crowe's career gone as opposed to how bad the movie is.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, but it's is it just like not picking the right projects? Like, is that what's happened, or did it really start to fall apart for him when he was going through all of that trouble there a few years ago? Is
Probably
that really where his career fell apart?
Probably a little bit of both, that would be my
Yeah.
guess. Yeah. I
Mm.
mean, he could still land a good supporting role, like every now and then, like Marvel's Love and Thunder. He
Yeah.
was Zeus there, so he can still get that every now and then. But yeah, I understand that his days as a leading man in a AAA film may be overdone with, which is sad because he was the leading box office
Oh
entity
man.
during the early part of this century. And
Yeah.
I guess that's to be no more. But it is, of course, the box office. So please let us know your thoughts if you're going to check out The Bike Riders, Kind of Kindness. Both of those are pretty good rated movies. Plus, also as well, The Exorcism. Please let us know your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, Melinda Barkhouse and I are back. Melinda Barkhouse Ross and I are back. It's Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much again for listening. Before we head to the break and my conversation with TJ Johnson, the Nintendo Direct came earlier this week. The not so E3 could be E3, should be E3, would be E3, but isn't E3 type deal. You get a chance to check it out. Switch owners, I at least they've got more coming on the way than PlayStation 5 owners at this point in time.
Yeah.
I know a new Zelda was announced. Again, not really straying from I know Josh was asking for a new IP, and I think that's just asking for way too much right now. Maybe when the Switch 2 comes out, but they did announce at a Zelda, Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, where you play as Zelda instead of Link. That's coming out in late September. Your thoughts? So funny because if a Xbox or PlayStation game came out looking like that, people would just be in just like an uproar. But because it's Nintendo, it gets a pass that it can look like that. It's great. Yeah, that's fun. Look, my gosh, she has a cloning technique where she can clone tables and chairs. All right, that's awesome. So it is what it is. But I think Nintendo gets a pass sometimes where PlayStation, Xbox doesn't. But your thoughts on Legend of Zelda? I think it's cool that they're going to be giving you the option now of playing as Zelda.
Yeah, I mean, let's do that. That sounds fun to me. But I want to go back to what you were just saying about like getting the pass on the graphics and stuff like that. I think that is forever just going to be part of the charm of Nintendo.
I guess so, yeah.
Is
Because
those
the
is
Wii.
those yeah, is those kind of cutesy graphics and stuff like that. I think that's just, I mean, at this point, you just have to look at it to know that you're looking at a Nintendo game. But if you did the same, even with an Xbox or PS5 exclusive, you would have no way to tell which console exactly that was on just by looking at it. But looking at the Nintendo stuff is instantly identifiable. And I think that's why they do it.
And again, it's up to everyone out there on their own taste. And obviously gameplay is going to have definitely a part of it. And Zelda gameplay is really unmatched out there. So obviously I'm expecting that from a 100-hour adventure, hopefully, that you get out of Legend of Zelda that's coming out later this year. I do want to mention, though, that next year, early next year, supposedly they're going to come out with Metroid Prime 4. I don't know if you got some footage of that. Now, that, to me, if that's the original Switch that I saw the footage on, that's the best looking Switch game I've ever seen.
Oh.
From Nintendo, who has not always given Metroid the love it deserves. Again, the fans out there have not given Metroid the love it deserves. It seems to be that one identifiable piece to Nintendo, but it's never been even anywhere near the status of Zelda, Mario, a Pokemon or anything, any of the big names in Nintendo, but yet it's still, we're now up to a fourth Metroid Prime. So tell me your thoughts on Metroid. If you get a chance to see it, it looks not too bad.
Well, I mean, we yeah, no, that's great. And I'm always for games that manage to find a way to improve on their stuff and to make their stuff look better. I think that that's key to staying competitive as well as, being a compelling game. But much like when we're doing this streaming, your video can be sketchy, but if your audio isn't great, then you've got a problem off the bat. I feel like that's a little bit backwards when you're talking video games. You really need the graphics and stuff to be great. Your audio can be secondary because people can just turn it off if they don't like it, and they'll play their own music anyway. But I think that I forget my point, but that's where I was going with that.
I just think the Nintendo fan base is a different breed than the PlayStation Xbox, because PlayStation Xbox, like you said, because they're supposed to be cutting edge, people just nitpick everything about, game releases or game trailers or in-footage trailers or in-game trailers or anything like that that's out there.
Yeah.
But yet Nintendo will always get a pass because it's Nintendo. People are more tolerable of any, things that are maybe don't look as cutting edge or are as cutting edge as what you see on the other platforms, which is fine. But it's funny because people are cited that, Nintendo had a good direct. I thought it was okay. I thought it was fine. But the problem, for me is it's always about Nintendo putting out smaller stuff and making it bigger than they actually seem. Like there's a ton of remakes or HD ports that are on the way, as far as that they announced in this trailer, as far as, you're getting, like, for instance, you're getting Marvel versus Capcom Fighting Collection, which is a whole bunch of HD remakes. Super Mario Party, that's coming out. That's pretty good. That looks like it's something going to be, familiar to audience out there. But the Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake, remake HD. They're uploading some like Perfect Dark and Turok and older Metroid and Zelda Game Boy versions to the Nintendo Store. These are supposed to be part of your great announcement lineup, whereas you go to a PlayStation, Xbox, and it's all about how many AAA games we can go ahead and throw at you. It just seems like there's different standards. Luigi's Mansion's 2 HD. Again, it just seems like there's different standards on what people will say is a good direction for these companies.
Yeah, well, and I think that is also another part of the charm of Nintendo, because they seem to always go in a way that seems to be counterintuitive to the lead that PlayStation and Xbox are taking on things. And at least that's how I felt about it anyway. I think that I think what's really great about Nintendo is they absolutely understand their customer base, and they understand what their players expect from their games, and they continuously deliver on that. They don't really deviate too much from their center point, which I think is also smart. You just know what you're going to get for the most part when you sit down with a Nintendo game. And I think that's a good thing. And their longevity is proof in the pudding, I suppose, of it working.
And can't argue with success when it ultimately comes down to it. Over 100 million units sold, one of the greatest selling units of all time. Waiting for Switch 2, I know a lot of people are. So we'll see what happens. But again, Nintendo does have some things down the pike. Again, if you feel like Nintendo won this E3, not E3, could be E3, should be E3, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Or PlayStation or Xbox, please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. But before we head on out for this week, and I turn it over after the break to my conversation with TJ Johnson, what's up with you and Vampires and Vitae?
Oh man.
Besides
So
driving your husband insane.
yes, so that is a large part of it. So we had obviously it's been a minute or two since we've published an episode. We had some kind of internal stuff happen, and I've just kind of fallen off of the horse of editing. So I have a couple of days off. I'm going to try to get a couple of episodes done here in the next couple of days and get some new stuff out. But right now in the story, we met Barnaby's sire. That didn't go so well for the sire, or Robbie's storyline that he had planned for that. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen when we sit down to play this Sunday, but I'm excited about it because anytime that we do something that Robbie truly does not expect, or that Robbie truly hadn't even considered when he was, sitting down and coming up with these little plots and schemes that he does with his NPCs, the next game is always very, very interesting because it's always like he comes down. It's like the hand of God comes down and corrects your course and points you in a direction that still allows him to tell at least a piece of the story that he intended when he came up with the idea for the sire to even be in town. So it's always interesting to see how he's actually going to have it happen and how he's still going to get around this major roadblock that we've now set directly in his path. So it's always interesting, and it's one of my favorite things when it happens at the table. It's not that we mess with Robbie's story, but just that now we've done something that he truly didn't expect. So we need to brace ourselves because we also are about to get something that we would never expect. It's always exciting.
But that's okay. You can just say you messed with Robbie's story. That makes it sound so much funnier.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, we broke the story a little bit on him the last time we played. So we'll see what our punishment is this time around.
But it is Vampires and Vitae. Please catch up to what's going on in this current season today, wherever you get your podcasts, and just can't wait for some new episodes to hit right there for you at Vampires and Vitae. Before we head on out, my friend, it's so funny because I was talking to Roger the other day, saying maybe we should get together or at one point in time, get the old crew back together one last time for one last adventure. But maybe you have to update the D&D. I was thinking maybe we should do that. And I'm looking at, I guess there's some new updated D&D core rule books coming out.
Yes, there are. And
two of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they started working on that. If I remember my timelines correctly, and forgive me if I have gotten it a little bit askew, but it seems to me that they were talking about this D&D 1 around the same time as the all of the copyright stuff was happening, the OGL stuff.
So my point is, there's 2 rule books coming out.
Yeah.
$50 each. So it's $100 just to understand the core rules of D&D.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What part of this do I not understand?
Well, the part that you don't understand is that the people who now own Dungeons and Dragons, Hasbro, they're all about the Benjamins. So I think that that's really why we have a new edition of D&D happening. I really don't think that it was time for it. I think that there is still enough life in 5e. I was going to call it V5. That's vampires. But I think there's enough in 5e that they still could have had content for a couple of more years. This feels, albeit they did all of the community feedback and all of that stuff, but I just feel like it seemed rushed to me. I haven't looked at it. I didn't, because I was so upset about the OGL stuff when it was all happening, that I didn't look at anything. So I'm going into it completely dark. And to be honest with you, I don't know that I want to give them my $100 to get those 2 books just to have a new set of rules. Like 5e is working perfectly fine for my table. I'm at a point now as a dungeon master that I can homebrew my own reasonably entertaining game specifically for my tables and the people that are around it, and I know the personalities and understand what they like. So I don't know that I ever need to buy more Dungeons and Dragons stuff from Hasbro. Maybe intentionally, but I don't think that I ever need to. If I do, I'll get something that has been supported or written by like an independent, like I'll go to the DMs Guild or something and I'll find some really cool independent writers campaign and see if I can use some of that and expand on that kind of stuff. But as far as getting into 1D&D or D&D 1, whatever it is that they've named it, I'm not so sure. And the only thing that really annoys me is that I have so much stuff on D&D Beyond that I have to maintain that subscription. Otherwise, I wouldn't even give them that money. But I've invested in it so much at this point that I have to re-up the subscription every year.
I think I'll get the audiobook version.
Maybe you know what? I mean, it might be, except for when you get to those, like, when you get to the class descriptions. It'd be like, for your focus. Yeah, I can't imagine anything drier than listening to that. Can you imagine? Even if because you'd have to read it verbatim, otherwise parts of it wouldn't make sense if you tried
to.
What if
Morgan Freeman voiceover?
No, that would be too soothing. It would be too soothing. Wait, I don't think I have a D&D book right. They're way over there. So I won't grab them. And I would have given you an example of what I meant. But you get your little, there's like a paragraph and it'll be like your
+1 upgrade to
your hit dice is the D8 to hit dice, and you get 1 D8 for each additional level. It's stuff like that. Like that would be incredibly awful to listen to. It's bad enough to read sometimes. My eyes get a little dry and I've got to take a break. But
yet Hasbro wants you to pay $100 for it.
Absolutely. And I'm not begrudging the people who wrote the book. Like I'm not upset about that. Please don't get me wrong in my intention for what I'm talking about. It really is just what I see as a money grab from Hasbro. I'm just not convinced that it was time for 5e to go the way of the dodo bird yet. But there are also people out there who thought that 3.5 was nothing was necessary to be made past 3.5. So maybe I'm just starting to sound like the old curmudgeons that you run across every once in a while in some of those Facebook groups.
Okay. I think you're just in line with everyone else.
Maybe.
The rising costs of D&D. Yeah.
And you really don't need things like a D&D Beyond subscription. You really can play Dungeons and Dragons with 1 set of dice, 2 pieces of paper, and a pencil. You really can. You don't have to buy the miniatures. You don't have to even go out and buy yourself a piece of plexiglass to put in the middle of the table to draw your grid on. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You can play D&D again for the cost of like a book that you would use in school and a pencil. That's really all that you need. You really don't have to sink money into all of the stuff that they're telling you need to. D&D is about people sitting around a table and telling a story together all at once. It's really not about having your D&D Beyond subscription and having your digital or your virtual tabletop subscription, right, with all of your modules paid. It's really not about that stuff. That's what they're telling you it's about. It's about your people, the people that you love so much. Then you're sitting around a table and you're telling these goofy stories, and the next thing you know, you almost kill a dragon with 1 shot with your barbarian, and a drunken monk character with sharp toenails scratches the dragon and kills it and takes your kill. Like that's really the stories that you're going to tell. It's not going to ever be, oh man, this one time on D&D Beyond I had so much fun. You're never going to tell that story.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Sorry, Gerald. I've ranted hard too. I'm sorry.
That's what no need to apologize. That's exactly what I thought when I suggested it, and I knew to go from there because it's always a touchy subject with you, and that's D&D. If you have thoughts on D&D as far as the rising costs of Dungeons and Dragons, please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, I truly appreciate you always stopping by. Next week, we've got more to talk about, more great movies, more great fun, more great shows. You'll be caught up on everything. God help you. You and Robbie are all together this weekend.
Yeah, 3 whole days.
Watch out, Vegas. Watch out, pop culture.
The
and
chaos.
Watch out for everyone out there right here at the P PCC Multiverse.